red carpet, flashbulbs like lightning. The A-list smile never cracks, until a strobe hits silver and his pupil blooms wolf yellow for half a heartbeat. Headlines call it an AI glitch. He knows better. Tonight the contract says appearance. The moon says hunger, and the collar at home remembers his throat. Werewolf horror isn't a jump scare, it's a schedule. When the full moon rises, Hollywood's brightest star vanishes, and something with older manners takes his place. An actor carved from myth, a studio built on daylight, and a calendar wired to the lunar clock. Clauses hide the lycanthrope. No night shoots, no enclosed sets, no glass without exits. He keeps a silver collar like a relic, a bell that hums like mountain air, and a vault that knows his name. Tonight an eclipse drifts over an awards show. If the wolf answers the cue, cameras will catch a transformation no editor can save. This is a Hollywood werewolf story of dread, restraint, and survival. Transformation horror without a drop spilled on screen. You're watching Whispering Narratives. Cinematic werewolf horror, lycanthrope lore, and full moon suspense. Subscribe to join the pack, tap the bell to keep the moon close, and drop awake in the comments so the algorithm knows you made it through the dark. Now, lights down. The story begins. Flashbulbs crackle like dry lightning along the boulevard, and the A-list actor swims through a river of cameras, tucks pressed to a blade's edge, eyes soft as velvet on glass. Publicists shape the air around him, manufacturing a safe tide, while a billboard of his own face leans over the theater. 12 stories of myth with a grin that never stiffens. Beneath his cuff, a thin circle of tempered silver kisses the wrist, patient as a memory. One lens catches the slightest yellow swell in his pupil, a bloom that flickers and dies under applause. The crowd reads it as an artifact. The wolf reads it as rehearsal. Somewhere in the Hollywood hills, a dog mistakes the evening for a cathedral and begins a hymn. He doesn't flinch. He lifts a hand, accepts adoration, and moves like a rumor through perfume and noise. Werewolf horror threaded invisibly through tucks, lycanthrope breath folded behind fresh mints. Transformation guilt buffed to a mirror shine. Past midnight, the mansion exhales its refrigerated calm. A corridor of framed posters watches him return with the fatigue of kings. He turns, a handle disguised as a book spine, and enters the sanctum masked as a sensory deprivation suite. The walls drink the light and keep the secret. Matte black paint hides claw marks the way a polite smile hides a nightmare. He lowers a silver collar to the floor the way a pilgrim sets down an heirloom relic. The room remembers him with a hum. Bones remember choreography, knees to floor, breath measured, anger filed like a dangerous blade. He cues a scene from the werewolf film that made him a household name. The camera, greedy as ever, drinks the salt from his lashes. Critics said the performance was feral. He knows better. The truth tasted like iron and eucalyptus. The moon kept time. He closes his eyes, counts to 7, and opens them again too. The same old sentence carved under the ribs. The full moon is a contract you sign with your body, whether you can read it or not. A lie becomes sacred once it is notarized. His rider remains unchanged from film to film. No night shoots on red days, no enclosed sets during lunar rise, special consideration for physiological sensitivities. Legal teams call it wellness. Publicists call it boundaries. The studio trades calendar space for gravity. Nobody asks what the color means. Dawn begins its quiet gold surgery on the palms outside. He eats clean, drinks water, keeps his rage perfumed and folded. The werewolf story lives in logistics long before it ever shows teeth. He keeps rosaries of breath. He keeps a panic room with soundproof seals hidden behind a minimalist shelf. He keeps a trainer who measures heart rate variability against lunar tables. He keeps a therapist who writes compulsion like a prayer the page absorbs. Guilt refuses to absorb. It plates the nerves and waits for heat. On the lot, resin pines whisper under fan-driven wind. A crane pulls a false moon across the rafters, a coin that buys terror wholesale. The camera asks for the eyes. He gives sorrow without theatrics. A controlled burn the lens will call legend. A ballast coughs in the rig. 5 minutes, the AD says, and the blood in his neck hears a different order entirely. He blinds breath into symmetry. He counts down with the wolf. Action arrives like a guillotine that learned manners. He speaks lines that will be called haunting, and a small fog curls from his lips across glass. The operator wipes and grins. He tilts his head, lets the human part stand between the room and the thing that would rather turn it into a cage of red verbs. PR is the gentle alchemy that turns sin to narrative. He sits on a midnight talk show couch beneath a sky of bulbs and speaks in soft asphalt tones about boundaries, health, silence as a friend. The crowd practices mercy. Clips detonate across feeds. He becomes an object lesson with good hair. Back home, lilies wait in the foyer, white as peeled moons. A florist's ribbon carries a narrow line. You are not alone. Cigarettes and rain cling to the paper's edges. He takes the flowers to the vault and places them by the collar. The room inhales, the petals glow against the paint. He plays footage of himself telling a ballroom that mental health matters. The vault holds the audio of what came after, hands pressed flat to black walls, breath counted until the night forgot his name. Werewolf horror is not fangs first. The worst of it is the calendar's faithfulness. The handler eats schedules for breakfast and barters with phases of the moon. One calendar is respectable and bright with studio color. The other rides inside it like a ghost map. Dark squares for dangerous nights, crescents for caution, full circles for stay away. Exceptions grew like fast plants after the first mist. Shoot, the first quiet fee, the first rumor about claustrophobia nurtured into a tree that made shade. A drone yawns over hedges one noon and catches a frame of silver at a throat through the glass. The image survives online for less than an hour before money digs its quick grave. Graves breathe. The handler burns a private prayer in a sink and floods it with cold water. Cure, end, mercy. The god of Los Angeles replies with a calendar, silver. Lake holds the sky like a rumor. A midnight pickup waits on a lover's bridge, locks clinging to crowning wire, keys sleeping in dark water. The call sheet says 30 minutes. His calendar says storm. He comes anyway because penance uses the same muscles as running. Portable light paints cobalt on the air. The script asks him to think. The body asks to become a sentence no screenwriter wants to sign. The first pop tastes like a coin on the tongue, the second like fruit torn by unclean hands. Admiration blooms on the director's face, a misunderstanding gorgeous enough to hate. He runs. He does not roar, because an extra leans on the rail and a camera blinks like a child, and the moon has placed money on the lake, daring him to bite. Eucalyptus combs his coat, brake dust licks his gums. He kneels behind a tree and completes a familiar equation: collar, chain, lock, breath. The city listens without intervening. The wolf inside tests steel and then admits it. The ground takes dictation in scratches and tremors. The moon edits nothing. The studio cannot fire gravity. Meetings bloom like pale flowers around tables too, cold for tears. They pitch a prestige horror about a famous man who refuses to speak the criminal's name. He will star and consult and produce, daylight only, skylights in all stages. Silver lacing on doors approved by union eyes. Medics briefed without the expected words. A mental health clause shaped like a shield. He steps onto day one and meets a mirror designed to tell the truth gently. He places a palm to glass and sees not a monster, but a refugee. Tears happen without acting. The camera behaves well. Later, in the trailer, he cools tendons against a gel pack and listens to them recite an alphabet learned from Winter. A small figure waits at the exit gate. Florist, cigarettes, rain, holding a tiny bell on a thin chain. Mountains live in the bell's hum, pack maps wake under bone. He takes the charm as if accepting direction from a compass that remembers where mercy went when the roads forgot it. Between dawn and wrap, he becomes efficient at exits and stubborn with daylight. He builds a new vault in the bright, soft light, acoustic felt, a monk's chair. The silver collar hangs on a hook as a tool, not a whip. The bell rests beneath, a shirt like a quiet oath. He writes about craft without naming hunger. He learns that stillness can be sharpened into something that cuts dread. Sells a man who mastered himself. The wolf tests hinges and finds them improved. He eats with people who know nothing useful and lets laughter run safely. The collar does not object. The bell hums when he sleeps. A director with an honesty problem sells a sunset that forgets to end. Night creeps up the hill. The coyotes write. Punctuation in the chaparral. A generator spits a flare and recovers. The bell vibrates once as if advising retreat. He nods to the handler. Choreography begins. A stand-in absorbs the last of the light. The crew relearns the comfort of half-truths. Near the trailers, a child in costuming watches him with juice box gravity. The child points at the bell. He covers it with his palm and lowers his head to that altitude. A treaty is signed without grammar. He leaves before the moon remembers his address. Another ceremony lifts a city onto its toes. He sits in a tux that holds him like good armor. The collar presses under silk. The bell measures blood. Over the roof, the moon enters Earth's shadow with imperial calm. Eclipse phones lift like glass flowers. A laugh about wolves of Wall Street sails across the audience like a knife wrapped in ribbon. He rises without being called. A green exit breathes backstage. He descends to a maintenance room he has inspected, lays chain on concrete, sets lock, counts breath in 3s and then 7s, and then nothing. Above, a winner thanks mothers and agents. Below, steel teaches the old hunger a grammar of limits. Light returns to the moon. Applause spills like hot rice. He wipes his face, reties the bow, and sits where he started. The wolf quiet under ribs. The man calm enough to hear his own pulse learning a slower song. Music gnaws chandeliers at the after-party. He steps onto a balcony wound in ivy and blue light. The florist leans on the rail, a coal of smoke blinking in her hand. He shows the bell like a confession without sin. She nods. He speaks around the truth as one walks a sleeping dog around. A crib, cycles in a grammar anyone can accept. Boundaries that hold. A craft that needs daylight. She taps ash into a pot of ivy and leaves him to the view. He types a logistics note into a calendar and refuses to write the word moon. He refuses to write the word wolf and writes rest. At home, he hangs the collar like a wrench, sets the bell in a ceramic bowl, opens a window for seawater air, removes, lilies now limp with duty. He sleeps without weapon dreams. Before the clauses, before the collar, there was a stairwell and a boy drinking moonlight like espresso. A wrench dropped and rang. The pupils narrowed. A pressure behind the eyes sharpened. Shadows into knives. He finished the take by memory and blacked out in the car with a mouth arguing with its bones. Morning found him under a hoodie with a neck that remembered chains it had never worn. He learned the first law of survival. Never transform where the camera can love you. Werewolf transformation wanted spectacle. He gave it a parking lot and a bathtub, and the silence of someone who had not yet learned the right words for werewolf horror, but understood debt. He met the silver by accident, which means fate took off its costume. In a prop house where saints, medals slept with broken cuffs, a collar waited like a blunt sacrament. The owner didn't ask why, he asked for dates. Red circles. Cash exchanged hands. That night, the change did not halt. It gentled. Rivers accept dams reluctantly and then memorize them. He wept into linen and didn't call it weeping. He called it a solution. The wolf learned the compromise and took notes. Mentors arrive encoded. Iz came as a cinematographer whose hands steadied only when a camera perched on them. The old man rearranged schedules with the courtesy of a surgeon and set practical lamps where the moon might otherwise throw knives. He named light as if naming weather could change it. He taught the boy where to stack stones so a river would rage more beautifully and drown no one. Some fires can't be put out, the old man said. Learn the hearth. He did. He carved it into contracts and called it process. The world called it talent. The wolf recognized a wall with polite teeth. Paparazzi followed as the price of affection. One night a motorbike shadowed him from valley to flats, then tapped glass at a red light. A visor lifted, hands shone empty. A folded photo slid across, knees on black paint, silver around a throat, eyes hunting the floor. A shake of the head, no, and the photo returned to the backpack. Everyone needs one secret, the writer said. Monsters aren't news unless they chew the right kind of people. Ride safe. The bike peeled away. He drove home with a heartbeat that sounded like applause delivered privately. In the morning, an envelope found a P.O. box with no note and enough mercy to pay a mortgage, and the lunar calendar remained unpersuaded. Therapy smelled like tea and raked sand. No clock showed seconds. He described pressure without fur, dread without teeth. She offered a vocabulary that behaved: modulation, boundary, ritual, pair. He brought the words into the vault like dry wood and learned to make a fire that warmed rather than burned. Some days she asked the bone phase. He answered, without superstition. Naming isn't worship when done gently. Surf in his ears turned panic into metronome. Transformation horror bent into choreography. Mercy took practice until it arrived on set without having to be summoned. The wolf learned the difference between a door and a wall. Walls keep calendars. His house adapted like an intelligent dog. The refrigerator light dimmed at 3 a.m. The HVAC cooled corner by corner on the right nights. The pantry's lowest shelf held decoy meat he never ate. Plants forgave neglect. The vault became a chapel. The lock became dignified. The key hung on a cord that never tangled. Bad nights allowed pacing until souls memorized the floor's code. He let the bell hum the mountains into his sternum and imagined snow forgiving everything it could without becoming a liar. Mornings found him asleep in doorways like a pilgrim. He woke without apology. The creaks sang the hymn of a ship that knows the sea and trusts the captain. The prestige horror asked for a mirror film in black and white, threading through the color like a root. In that dream, he ran the wrong direction through Los Angeles, up escalators, across car hoods, over roofs. Noon light kept him safe while he offered fear to the lens. The bell called him back by one bright note. In the edit bay, his upward sprint would cut against his downward walk into the eclipse's maintenance room. 2 rituals saluting from separate stairwells. He found a folder labeled medical, wellness, schedule alignments, and discovered a decade translated into grids, lunar tables against call sheets, blood work beside lighting diagrams, security logs next to EMF readings in the hills. Violation rose, and then tenderness drowned it. Someone had made a humane map of the animal and walked it across 10 years without applause. He poured whiskey. The handler took water. Patterns, the handler said, not monsters. A pattern worth taking a bullet for. 3 people had seen and kept seeing. No names exchanged. The wolf turned once and faced the door, not to escape, but to guard. A cedar-scented card offered mountains. He drove switchbacks to a sky less addicted to neon. A cottage that did not pretend. A kettle, a bell, a photograph of peaks older than wolves. The florist's grandmother had counted winters with bells and soup and patience. The bell did not end hunger, she said. It translated it. He felt the hum align with bone, grateful for a compass that never lied, and went back down the mountain with a promise to return without needing rescue. A lawsuit tried to weaponize clauses. He sat in a windowless room, face polite, answers clean. Opposing counsel pushed into nights and health. He let the wolf flatten to the floor, the mind's version of lying still. Hipa walked into the room like a federal angel. Knives went rubber. He left with a pulse that sounded like quiet victory. In the parking garage, he pressed his forehead to the steering wheel until the leather remembered his name. He said the moon's name once, not in prayer, but like weather acknowledged before walking out the door. Los Angeles pretended no one bled under good suits. He drove home anyway. A friend asked for a cameo that required one night exterior on a red circle. He could have forced it. He didn't. A kitchen phone call replaced an alley fight. The episode aired. Fans praised tenderness. The friend texted a rating and one word: lived. He locked the collar, let the bell hum, and tasted the rare joy of a decision that left no bruise. The wolf slept on the far side of the room, guarding a gate. The werewolf story does not often allow victories without interest. When it does, the body remembers. Packs form without ceremony. A stunt coordinator thawed stakes during dangerous weeks. A makeup artist kept silver dust quarantined. A driver memorized which exits had tunnels that lied. A producer insisted on outdoor lunches under thin cloud. None said wolf. All moved as a constellation. He did not thank them with speeches. He delivered on performance and tried not to bleed. The pack kept him from becoming a warning told to children who want cameras. At the ocean, he counted 10 waves like a superstition he had not earned. He walked into water to the ribs, let cold blank the chalkboard. He dipped the bell, salt swallowed sound. He held the collar, the sea held its indifference. He said aloud, "I will not feed you with strangers." The vow belonged equally to man and wolf. He emerged sanded, made eggs, declined a scene that would have let hunger call itself art. Wrote in an unlined notebook until the hand cramped, slept in daylight and signed the vow again a week later. The moon approved without smiling. The studio ran a blood moon drill and called it something else. Doors, exits, light paths, medkits, quiet rooms. He attended and learned where the walls breathed. He went home embarrassed by pride and fed the good kind anyway. The pride of a man who could keep people safe without applause. Love entered the house without tripping alarms. An extra blanket in the morning. A book left open to a line about the difference between hunger and harm. No ring lights, no declarations, just oxygen shared. On a night that threatened to undo him, a hand on his sternum reminded the riot under. Ribs where the door home was. He made pancakes. He did not say thank you like a debtor. He lived in a room that no longer echoed like a well. A director from elsewhere mailed fog and grief bound as a script, where a werewolf grows old without killing anyone, a town adds extra latches, a lover brings soup, a priest leaves room in doctrine, for beasts, daylight clauses, a cooperative calendar. He learned to not perform. He learned boredom that did not become violence. Villagers handed bread and blessings that mentioned wolves like weather. He stood on his balcony back in Los Angeles and nearly felt anonymous, rarer than awards, safer than armor. Years later, he sat in a quiet room and delivered an interview that owed nothing. Craft, discipline, the romance of restraint. He said, "Werewolf horror once and lycanthrope once and full moon without apology." He drew a map with no street names for those who needed to believe maps exist. He ended by speaking to the viewer who breathes through 3 a.m. with a palm on sternum while transformation terror rakes the nerve endings. You're not cursed. You're calendared. Make a ritual. Keep good tools. Don't feed the wrong part of you just because the night is loud. The camera turned off like a gentle animal curling to sleep. He went home and hung the bell. He slept. One more scene, not for a film but for the man. Kitchen at 6:10 a.m. A song on the radio that remembers the 70s as kinda. Eggs fried, without breaking yolks. Toast stolen by a hand he loves. Butter fingerprints on the counter like a constellation that knows both their names. He laughs. Not victory. Weather report. Nothing catastrophic today. He chalks the date on a slate, draws a circle around the next red night without dread. The circle is a ring, not a noose. Dishes washed right away. A towel hung on the same hook as the silver collar. Two tools, equal dignity. He stands at a window and lets unambitious sunlight find his face. He whispers, "We live," and the house answers in wood and air. Somewhere a dog answers in its language. The bell rests, the wolf listens, the man inhabits. The city outside keeps telling fairy tales about monsters who look like men and men who look like monsters. He lets the fairy tales sell their tickets. He works in daylight, tells truths that fit, holds the rest with both hands and refuses to drop it. The moon rises round and unashamed. He watches the silver edge climb and does not blink. The night opens and the door stays closed, not from fear, but from choice. The story keeps its promise. He walks the lot again with a thermos of tea and a script thick with daylight. Crew call, sun sharp, as an honest question he will not answer. He touches the collar through the shirt, not as a penance but as a ritual, a craftsman respects. He touches the bell, hears mountains in miniature. He steps into a set that looks like a house that looks like his, and stands where the mark tells him to stand. The director says whenever you're ready, which in this trade means now. He fills his lungs with air the color of clean slate. The camera inhales with him. When he speaks, the room accepts the voice of a man who learned to place the beast where it cannot harm the audience or the stagehands or the person who stole his toast. The lines remember him. The story moves. No blood, no collapse. Plenty of teeth kept where they belong. Afternoon brings the scene with the hallway of mirrors that only reflect once. He walks toward the reflection that refuses to follow and places his palm on the glass. 19 seconds hold like prayer. No crack, no trick. Two versions of a man agree to share. Cut, heads bow toward shoes because eye contact would turn into confession. He returns to the vault that night and sits with the collar on his lap, studies it like a poem that once pulled someone back from a ledge. He polishes the metal, not out of guilt but gratitude, and hangs it up. He listens to the bell without touching it and hears the hum drop into the house's bones like a small sun finding a socket. Another premiere spills velvet and microphones. The billboard shows a face less god and more weathered human. The film inside glides like a slow blade. A Hollywood werewolf learns a ritual that requires no one else's blood. Audiences breathe together. Critics lean toward the hallway scene as if caught by fishing line. Applause lifts without barbed wire. Outside, a reporter asks for redemption. He supplies a soundbite that won't harm anyone. No mirrors tonight. No corridors. Just the road home. Sodium lamps blinking like sleepy eyes. Mornings return in sequence rather than ambush. The lunar table still wheels its silver machinery overhead, a clock that takes no bribes. He does not bargain. He prepares. He does not hate. He understands. Releases planned for daylight. Post-production pushed into safe hours. Invitations refused when they require prettier lies. Hunger still stands at attention on schedule. He sets out bowls of stillness and lets it feed there. Werewolf horror remains a map of appetites and cycles overlaying a human face. Dread remains, but dread with a handle is respect. Transformation remains, but transformation with consent is ritual. Guilt compacts into a palmable stone rather than a boulder dragging a spine. He keeps walking at dawn in a park where fog remembers how to kneel. Sometimes a dog without a leash joins and sets pace. Sometimes he walks alone and counts 7 breaths between each footfall and lets the bell rest. The city keeps its carnival. He keeps his teeth. When the red nights come, the house is ready, the lock dignified, the chair kind, the chain honest, the body trained, the mind practiced, the wolf awake and willing to lie down where steel and love have made a bed. Morning always remembers him. He rises, he works, he keeps faith with the craft, he keeps mercy with the moon. He keeps the pack fed with stories instead of blood. He keeps living. If anyone asks how he avoids movies on a full moon, no one does. Not really, because the contracts learned elegance and the handlers learned choreography, and the city loves a man who shows up on time. But if anyone could read under the ink, they would find a bell, a collar, a house that listens, a calendar that tells the truth, a man who practices the long, unfashionable art of not breaking anyone on his way to applause. They would find a werewolf story that stayed YouTube safe and human true by swapping gore for gravity and spectacle for ritual. They would find a star beneath the skin who refused to feed the wrong part of himself, even when the night grew teeth and called his name like a lover. He closes the day like a book with a ribbon in it, not finished, only marked. On the nightstand, the bell sleeps. On the hook, the collar gleams. Through the open window, the city breathes and the moon climbs its iron ladder. He turns his face to the wall and lets the wolf listen from behind the bones. Somewhere down the hill, a dog sings to a tired sky. The song finds him. He breathes. Dawn returns the face he wears for work. The story keeps its promise again. Breathe. The moon moves on and we keep our names. Subscribe to Whispering Narratives and stay with the pack. Like the story to feed the howl. Comment awake and leave your mark in silver.